Welcome to the Essential Libertarians, giving you the tools for self-governance. I have my favorite Arizona Meacock with me today. He also runs the coolest Twitter account. Him and New Hampshire are absolutely crushing it. This is none other than Harrison Wells. Harry, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good, Kareem. Been a while since I've been on the show, but I'm glad to get back into it.
Yeah, I'm glad. I was like, I need to get this guy. Like, oh, he's always busy doing something, so it's good to see you. Digging the mustache.
Thank you. Thank
So,
you.
and you got engaged, so congratulations on that.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
All right, but we got some bad news. You said some stuff went down with the Mises Caucus. Now, I
Mm-hmm.
think now I'll give you my opinion. Throw it to you. I think Sarwark needed to go because he was openly saying we need to have a debate about, getting involved in Ukraine. He took a lot of Democrat
Well,
positions.
I don't know if you saw, but about
Yeah,
in like early January, some stuff went down with me and Nicholas Sarwark as well.
correct.
So, yeah, I no fan of the old guard. Suffice
Yeah,
to say.
so it's hard. It's hard position. I always take the position with libertarianism. People always want, and I always criticize and say, well, I want an ideal utopia situation for everything.
Mhm.
Well, Kareem, I know you say ANCAP stands good, but will they make the roads perfect? Oh, there's a pothole in ANCAP stand. God help me. But if the government gives you horrible results and there's potholes everywhere, well, I guess that's just what we got to deal with. What I'll
Mhm.
say in this case is you have relevant institutional alternatives. To say I want a perfectly, principled libertarian party just isn't going to happen because
Mhm.
people are people and we do dumb things. I do dumb things too. I have takes that people don't like. The thing that is important is the old guard to me was almost going Democrat light. I don't even like to call them ANCOMs because I met ANCOMs, but they were,
Very few of them were anarchists.
yeah, they weren't
Yeah,
anarchists,
that's
and they were almost trending towards like Terra DeSisto was helping fund the DNC. Nick Sarwark was making blatantly, pro NATO comments and criticizing Ron
mhm.
Paul. And I'm not saying you got to like Ron Paul on everything. I'd maybe disagree with him on gold sometimes. Probably need to buy some, but I'm not saying you should worship Michael Heiss or Ron Paul even, but I am saying like he was blatantly attacking Ron Paul. He was pro NATO. He was pro intervention. He was, I think, he was anti-gun at some point. So these guys are basically Democrats. So they
Yeah.
had to go. So what's the institutional alternatives? Well, we have the classical liberal caucus, which does not have enough power to take over,
No.
and we had the old guard, and then we have the Mises caucus, which thank God did win. Now, I'm not here to say, well, I defend everything with Mises. I have my own, things that I disagree with. I am not hugely pro Millet because even if he improves the economy in Argentina, I do see siding with the NATO powers as a bad thing. I like people who go completely rogue if you're going to be an
Mhm.
anarchist. I think we, could have, there's issues with, Dave Smith and the immigration debate. There's issues with kicking,
Mhm.
good people out. There's issues with getting mad at New Hampshire and Arizona for having, in my opinion, a spicy message, which to me does win. So I'm not here to say, well, the Mises caucus is perfect. I'm not here to say even we had the best, and Rechtenwald's okay, but we have the best, presidential candidate. I think we can do. I think we can definitely do better. But but the issue is there's still a lot of problems. There's still a lot of
Mhm.
issues with the Mises Caucus as a whole. We're going to break those down. That being said, I'd rather have Mises Caucus than the old guard. I think we're going to do a lot of great stuff after the and it's planned. I'm not going to go into that, but we got some plans after the campaign. So I'm sticking with them because, as far as I'm concerned, this is the closest thing to being principled. That being said, I'm kind of pissed off at their decisions, getting rid of really good people.
Okay. Well, so I think there's a lot of different ways you can go with that. So obviously, I was recently a member of the Mises Caucus. Obviously, of the major factions within the LP, they are in fact my favorite. Um, at this point, I still think they kind of suck. Um, so look, I have no love at all for Starwark and the Prags or
Mhm.
the Classical Liberal Caucus. I do not want the LP to be a centrist party. I do not want it to be a moderate or, in any sense, reasonable party. I want the most radical and principled LP that we can possibly have. I don't think the Mises Caucus is very true to that vision at this point.
Okay.
I don't think that's what they stand for or represent. I don't think that's their goal. Um, I do think that there are some great people in the Mises Caucus. I think there's also some very incompetent people in the Mises Caucus, and that the party is not doing well. Um, I also think that's not entirely the fault of mismanagement.
Mhm.
We can talk about some of the other reasons I think the party's doing very poorly. Um, but I do think that the party has been mismanaged, and at this point, I have to say, I'm really questioning the validity of there being a libertarian party.
So I could go with this with two ways.
Mhm.
Now I know you said you're not sympathetic to anyone who's not an ANCAP, but I'm not going to go down the ANCOM road because I know you won't agree with that. But there's a thinker called Samuel Konkin, if you read him, from
I know
Agri.
who Konkin is, of
Okay,
course.
cool. So Konkin basically said the big disagreements with Rothbard, because they've had to break it down, was A, keep it local. Like, okay, fine. If you have no C-level corporations, I think Rothbard would be okay with some kind of multinational structure. But Konkin would say keep things localized, which I agree with. And also, Konkin really didn't believe in voting. Like my agorist friends just
Mhm.
say, hey, come up with alternative solutions to defeat the state. So that's another thing we can do is just say, hey, well, Eric July seems to draw an audience. You know, Jack Lloyd does good with comic books. There's other people who do good. If you're not a libertarian with a podcast, you can be a libertarian. Joshua Smith has a good, and Clint Russell have good podcasts. I'm trying to do a little bit of everything, argue on social media, get the ideas out there, debate people. You can do all that, plus having a garden, guns, chickens, taking care of your family members and friends and building a community. So that's
Yeah.
a potential idea, and just saying, well, I'm not going to vote, I'm not going to do any of it. I'll still be in, but then I guess that would be more of an agorist stance.
So I guess if you want to get into agorism, because of course I've done a debate about agorism before on this channel, and I took the anti-agorist side, and
Yes.
being honest, I lost. Um, I did go back and watch the AI debate, by the way, and I totally won that one. But yeah, I got bodied in the agorism debate. So,
Did you change your mind?
uh, not entirely. So, first of all, I'm not like the kind of anti-voting anarchist who thinks voting is aggression, or that all political participation is aggression, uh, or that like voting is consent to anything that an elected official does. I don't believe any of that, and I would never identify as an agorist because I don't agree with all of Konkin's opinions about wage labor, and I don't like that particular disagreement he had with Rothbard is one where I still take Rothbard's side. Um, that being said, um, on a praxis level, I don't know if I'm all in on like counter economics being the only answer. Uh, but I certainly think that there is something inherently flawed about third party politics as the answer.
I agree with you. Well, I give you an example. I met, Jill Stein, and here's how I look at it. So I went to Rage Against the War Machine. I met Jill Stein. Very cool. Funny enough, it was surreal. I met Daniel McAdams within 15
Mhm.
minutes, or like it felt like 15 seconds. I met Jill Stein, talked to her, Green Party candidate. And I'll say this: don't agree with her on energy policy. Don't agree with her on economics. Don't agree with them on guns. Probably, I didn't ask, but I can guess it probably wouldn't. But she's principled anti-war. And then I was recently at a protest in Pittsburgh in the federal building for Palestine, and I met one of the board directors in Pittsburgh, and I said, "Hey, it's nice to meet you." He said, "How are you?" He said, "Yeah, I'm the." We talked, and I said, "Hey, I'm Korean, with libertarian here." And I met people from all types at that protest. So it was a lot smaller, but I met former military chaplain. I met people on the left and the right. There was no counter protesters, which was good too. And then I met this guy from the Green Party. Said, "Yeah, I'm the board member of the Green Party. Our main focus is trying to, stop the war right now." So I said, "You know what? We can work on single issue coalitions." And that's how I think party politics is good. You get a bunch of people, because the Libertarian Party is not big enough. And when I ran for school board, I ran with a blue dog Democrat. I ran with a couple Republicans. So I find an issue that I want to tackle. Say it is immigration, which we can get into. And I say, who is resonating my beliefs? And I find the bigger group or the smaller groups and then make them a bigger group. And then we work from there. That's why I think it works, because unfortunately, until anarcho-capitalism gets to be, mainstream or more mainstream, and we'll see how that manifests, I don't see this overwhelming way to just when doing counter economics. Now, I haven't looked in the wage labor disagreement Conkin had with Rothbard, but I can debate that. So
yeah. So I the reason I have not abandoned the LP, I'm still an LP member. I still work within the Arizona LP. Is I've done some good within the LP by just using it as a vehicle for local activism, sort of getting vaguely right-wing liberal groups together and kind of saying, hey, let's fight this terrible zoning law. I've seen the LP do some good at that level. And I guess that's why I'm still involved with it. But first of all, I am not a coalitionist at all. I have very little tolerance for people who disagree with me about anything.
Yeah.
I'm okay with I think single issue coalitions are fine on an activism level. But I don't see much value in actually coordinating with them. I think all that really does is dilute your own message. Look at Rage Against the War Machine. I would argue that rally in particular would have been more effective if it was only libertarians.
Okay. So here's why I disagree with that, and principally so. First of all, there's the issue of libertarians are not the only anti-war people, and like it or not, if you have more numbers, it does have, in my opinion, more of effect. I know my agorists or friends will say protesting is just begging them. I'm not begging them. I'm putting my opinion out there. I'm going to continue to do that and continue to vote third party. But there's more people. There's people who are on the left who are anti-war. There are people on the right. There's people in the center. There's just regular people who are not ANCAT or anarchists at all who just say, man, I just don't like war. Now, I think they should all come and voice their opinion, because you get the more people that, even if you just get your regular guy who just says, well, I'm just looking through my phone there are people like this, just look on their phone or Instagram or this, and they're like, wow, this war is bad. We need to say something and do something. So
I'm not sure about that. I mean, I could be convinced otherwise. I still have some mixed feelings about this. But I think if you look at the damage that did to the LP brand and even to the anti-war brand, just because they didn't gatekeep some leftists like Josh Hinkle in particular.
Well, we did. That's not okay. So I was literally my co-host.
I know you were there, but I wasn't.
No, not even before my co-host. Sorry to interrupt. Leighton Radner. He's from Alaska.
Yeah, I know who he is. Yeah.
Outlaw Thoughts. Okay, so I don't get in the LP drama if other people regurgitate that to me because I'm focusing on like inflation, Gaza, things like that. That's what piques my interest because to me that's the real stuff. It's not just
Right.
like uh, someone made fun of bootleg and said you eat too much chicken or something. Like, okay, fine. Like, I'm not
Yeah.
going to lose my mind over this because that's not going to give me more freedom to Sarwark, yes, but like, oh, did you hear Clint Russell likes this or did you hear someone said this about this guy or just whatever. So I took some time and I was talking to Leighton. He said there was a speaker there named Scott Ritter, and he had
Yeah.
been had allegations for doing a lot of bad stuff. So what we did on Discord, we got a 4 or 5 man Mises mob and said, Scott, drop out, drop out, drop out, drop out. And then people said, well, why are you doing this? I said, well, I don't want to be
Okay.
associated with a guy like that. And he did drop out. I'm not saying I did it, but we had
Yeah,
a
yeah,
talk.
no. Look, I was pretty keyed into the Scott Ritter situation. I didn't really comment on it, but I was aware of it.
So that's gatekeeping.
Putting aside like Ritter's particular issue, I think there was a problem with that rally having anti-war voices that come to the war with a leftist viewpoint. The example I go to as like my default is Josh Hinkle, who's
okay
pro Russia. Like that's
I agree with you. So
like,
Max
I think that I get that like there's definitely leftists out there who have like anti-war messages that I agree with.
oh yeah,
I don't think it's always bad to work with them, but I do think the anti-war movement has a problem with being infected with third world loving leftists.
So here's what I'll say. The pro-Russian guys, yes, I have my sign over there, which was a crass sign that I got into. People say I went left. Well, I got into anarchism through punk rock, not actually through Ron Paul. I was an anarchist before I found Ron Paul. I had my crass sign that says the famous line from the punk band, the nature of your oppression is the aesthetic of our anger. Meaning how you oppress us is how it will manifest within our art. And I was talking to Luke Enzor, I'm sure you know Luke, and he said there's pro-Russian flags. So what I did is I would go over and I would talk to people. Wasn't a dick, but then I'm like, yeah, hey, how you doing? And I just put my sign over the Russia flag. And there are people like, yeah, I'm anti-war. I want Putin to win. I'm like, that's not anti-war. So I think we should gatekeep people who are pro-war. But just if you're a leftist, like say you're someone like Jimmy Dore, I don't think we should gatekeep. It'll be like Jimmy Dore can't show up. Tulsi's technically a left. Tulsi's on the left in a lot of ways. Like people.
Tulsi's, I think, a center right conservative at this point.
I don't know.
Being real, I don't think Tulsi has any opinions, to be honest. I don't think Tulsi Gabbard believes anything in particular. She's changed her mind 3 times now, completely.
Okay, fine.
I mean, she started. Did you know this? Tulsi Gabbard started her career in Hawaii as like a Christian evangelical.
Yeah. Because I watched her with Joe Rogan. She talked about I think it was Joe Rogan. Or
so I don't put much stock in the consistency of her opinion, to be honest.
Okay, but
no, look, we can work with these people on single issues. I don't think that like the single issue coalition protest strategy is helpful to the overall interests of liberty or helpful to the LP. Like if you want to do particular work on war, for example, that's fine, but I don't think that can be a broadly encompassing strategy. Like that can't be the plan. Do you get what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying, but I don't think I think it's a plan, not the plan. So here's the thing. I could be, the cool thing about being a libertarian and why a coalition is there could be people in my town who are Republic, Trumpy type conservatives, although I question how much that, and they want to get some better gun laws so I can work with them. And then there might be some leftists who want to work on Drug reform, I can work with that on them. And then, there's a lot of, and that's why, funny enough, I start coalition, because I was seeing like, okay, well, if you get large groups of people that say they want something, and you can coordinate even seemingly people who would disagree. I saw every type of person against Rage Against the War Machine. The problem is, like, gatekeeping would be hard, because I'd be like, okay, how far do you take it? Do you say, are you a
I,
libertarian? Yes.
I
Are you?
get I get where you're at. Um, but I think gatekeeping and coalitioning as the strategy, right? Can only be like a pragmatic case by case thing. Here's
Okay.
my example. I am very much a right libertarian. I speak somewhat often about the need to repeal the Civil Rights Act. Do you
Okay.
think it would be a good idea for me to coalition with a Nazi who agrees with me that we should repeal the Civil Rights Act?
Okay. I'll give you an.
Do you not see how that could be an issue, even though we're working together on something that we definitely do agree on?
Yeah. Okay. To give you an answer, yeah. If someone's like overtly statist in a very bad way, like a fascist or a Marxist, then yeah, I don't want to work with them. So I get you there, but
I
outside of that, if you all
I
right,
would I would simply say that we have to acknowledge that anytime we are coalitioning with someone, we're gonna get painted with the same brush in a way, and it's going to dilute our very uniquely principled and correct message.
I mean, okay, you can. No one has ever told me I'm unprincipled. They've called me every name in the book.
I didn't say that at all.
But here's the funny thing. But I have worked with the Trump Republicans in my town. It's very clear that I'm friends with a lot of ANCOMs. If people haven't seen, like, I'm quite open.
Yeah, everyone knows that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the one guy in the Mises caucus is like, yeah, I'm hanging out with, I'm doing praxis with my ego-com buddies and my mutualists. They don't like it. They say like, oh, these people, they're all, or I'm friends with primitivists. Oh, they're all stinky. But like, no,
Objectively
nobody.
true, by the way.
I mean, fine, whatever. As long as status, you can smell like, whatever. Probably have high testosterone though, so cool. But here's the thing. I take a look at it like the whole immigrant, like there's a big immigration debate right now in the LP that's, in my opinion, causing a lot of problems. Which I was going to bring up with you, and I know you're a right libertarian, but I just look at the issue, and if somebody I think is like Dave Smith is quite popular, so a lot of
Yeah.
people disagree with him. But I said I really thought about it and said, well, it's not closed borders versus open borders. This is kind of a statist decision. The issue is if you destabilize a country and then say, I will give you free incentives to leave said country, people are going to do it. It's like literally the government comes and destroys half of my
So
house and says, hey, you come over here, I'll buy you a house. Well, I'm going to go risk my life to get free stuff.
yeah,
And
so like on the immigration point, I think what you're saying about like some immigration, especially from South and Central America, being like this phenomenon caused by our own government, I think that's legitimate. And I think that's probably the best way for libertarians to message on the immigration point.
correct.
Right. Like if I was in Ron Paul's position, right, and I was on if I was on like a national debate stage somehow, I guess, as if the LP would ever get there, but whatever. If I was in that position, okay, I would message on immigration in like exactly the way you just described. I would say like, well, the reason they're all coming here is because we destroyed their countries, and we have the war on drugs, which is causing all these cartels. That being said, I think there is something valuable about having an LP platform which conforms to the letter to the theory of libertarianism. And the theory of libertarianism compels open borders. I think that's important.
Okay, but the issue is Rothbard has a quote, and I agree with him. He said, well, because people say, well, we can't have anarchy because of this, this, and that. Well, unless you're part of the World Economic Forum, you don't believe in a there are people who believe in a global government. He's incorrect in that part. There are, but
Sure.
but aside from them, America and Canada are separate nations. No one's like, help, it's impermissible anarchy. Okay,
Right.
so and I'm not playing policy fantasy when most people say they agree with peaceful divorce. I found everybody, even center left Democrats, I'm like, hey, peaceful divorce. They're like, yeah, I don't like Trump. So if peaceful divorce is on the table, borders to me, if I'm looking at this from a praxeological perspective, is the government saying, here's where this country begins and here's where that country ends. And I know people say, well, you won't have a country. Well, you don't really have a country of private property. And that's all the extent. And you have your community, which you can make decisions in. So I would say this: if America and Canada are not, so then where do you logically stop? Can the South leave? Can New York leave? Can this leave? So I would say it's up to Texas. The best thing Texas could do is secede and say, hey, we're going to let these people in or not. But the problem is the federal government. Here's another big issue: the country's destabilized. We have the drug war. Then on top of that, the federal government says, come on in. We'll give you this.
Okay.
We'll give you that.
So on the Texas point, I have a somewhat different take than I think a lot of people expect me to have because I'm so pro open borders. I don't think the federal government should force Texas to open their border. In the same way, I don't think the US federal government should force Ukraine or Israel or China to open their border. Right, like I don't view the federal government as having any legitimate jurisdiction. And I don't think I don't think it is ever a legitimate solution to endorse like like a policy of the government going around and fixing every problem. So yeah, I like in my view, it would be an aggression, right? It would effectively be it would effectively be an act of war for the feds to go down to Texas and say, no, you have to have your border open. I don't think that's their place. I just think Texas should open their own border.
I think I would agree. Well, okay, here's what I would say. What should be done is end the drug war, stop messing in other countries. That's one thing. Stop and stop. You can say, fine, you can come over. I made the joke here. I do a little bit of internet marketing. Well, a decent amount. And one thing I've noticed is if you put, I will give you anything for free. I'll teach you ecom for free. I'll teach you you get tons and tons of opt-ins. The minute you say, okay, fine, pay $10, people are like, whoa, I gotta pay. I gotta use my own resources, or I'm not going to get something for free. I don't want it. Mm-hmm. My big thing is if you take away if I put free beer, a sign that says free beer on my house, people are going to try and break in, especially here in America, in Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. And then I think the argument is, oh, well, instead of taking that sign down, just put a fence around your house. I'm like, no, stop giving the incentive to come. Stop incentivizing people to come here. If they want to come here, don't give them anything. Don't give them anything. If someone invites them over and says, do work for me, that's fine. But to me, that's the disaster. Because I really thought about it. I'm like, is a wall going to be a big deal? No. There's buses, there's airplanes, there's stuff like that. So all I'm saying is to take it from a praxeological incentive perspective and see, okay, is this what to give the principled answer? And that's also another big point of contention I have in the LP is, just saying we'll run RFK just to get numbers. And at least Spike was kind of cool with that and said, like,
right,
yo, This isn't.
Well, I take. Have you seen Scott's article on RFK as the LP? As the LP candidate,
Scott
Horton.
Horton. No, but I can probably tell you what I can probably say he's going to say no because RFK is, in my opinion, not principled. Like at first, I wanted to like him. I did. Like I want to. Generally, 9 times out of 10, I want to like people. I wanted to like Trump, and then where I wanted to like Malay. I wanted to like Justin Amash. I wanted to like a lot, but I hold political figures to an extremely high standard. Once you get in office, I'm looking at every single thing you do and not just how it is. It's like if you hire someone for a free market thing and they say, I'll do this, this, and this. Heck, I even wanted to like Elon Musk. I wanted to like a lot
Totally.
of Jordan
No, I
Peterson.
get it.
I wanted to like Jordan Peterson. But I completely despise all these people right now. I think I'm completely against all these people right now for various different reasons. Jordan Peterson being the latest one who just is unhinged. But
So
yeah,
how about this? Let me share my screen real quick
yeah.
because I'm going to share Scott's opinion, and I just want to say I agree with this entirely.
So you're not on the RFK train, which is good, which is kind of cool. I didn't expect us to agree this much. I thought you'd get some pushback.
So this is what Scott posted.
And Scott is not part of the
And
caucus, correct? Or he is.
I think he is technically a
but I heard
member
he kind
still.
of walked away.
Yeah,
after
he's
Clinton run.
significantly less involved now than he once was. But yeah, this is about my opinion almost entirely. For those who still think it's a bit ambiguous, I think Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a pedophile, and because he's a pedophile, he has become a Mossad asset. And for this reason, he absolutely cannot be the Libertarian Party nominee. No way, not happening.
I don't think
to do so would be to destroy the party permanently.
I will be careful. I don't have any proof that he's doing any of that stuff. Here's what I do know. He's domestically. He's not. He's very pro. At first, I wanted to like him. Like, give this guy a chance. Then I saw he was anti-gun. I'm like, no, this isn't good. Then I saw that he wanted to promote what I would call eco fascism or eco.
Yes.
So that's a no, a big no for me. Like the Green Party saying, I want to have windmills here and you can have nuclear energy here. I can live with that because I'm not going to lose my mind. I'll probably be like, hey, the lights are going out 3 times here and I got power here. But if you want to do that, do that. If you want renewable energy and solar, do that. That's what their position was. So I said, okay, I can work with that. But RFK, no, wants to impose. And then he still has the old school Democrat things. Then he's hanging out with, I think, Shumley.
Yeah, well, I just don't think he's a knowledgeable or honest person.
Yes,
to me, RFK seems like just another one of these, podcast going politicians who have figured out that you can hit it big by appealing to alt media. And so they're simply going to say whatever is the flavor of the month opinion at that particular moment. And I think RFK's flip-flopping on the Israel position was the perfect example of that. He thought being anti-Israel would be popular. It wasn't, so he changed his mind.
Correct.
He's simply a liar.
Yes. I don't think any of these politicians truthfully have any principle here other than what is cool. I don't really think they care. I think they are looking at analytics, statistics, and saying, oh, it's, same with Trump, saying with, oh, it's cool and hip to be pro-Palestine. Okay. Oh, no, but my donors are pro-Israel. So, I'll play, oh, okay, well, we need this and that. So they play this kind of like, game where they go back and forth and like, I don't know, I'm pro this, I'm pro that. I need deeply, but for me and you, we need deeply principled people. It can't just be a
Mhm.
guy who's like, yeah, I kind of think that. Now, am I always great with my principles? No,
Mhm.
there are times where, I sometimes I say, fine,
Mhm.
you got to be flexible on certain things. I'm not.
I, so I don't have any particular endorsement for the LP nomination, just to be clear. Um, I think there's positives and negatives to every candidate in the race. That being said, um, I think all of them would be significantly better than RFK because they're all libertarians and RFK's not.
Yeah, yeah. Here's the thing. I'm going with Michael Rectenwald because there is a plan with that. Uh,
Mhm.
yeah, trust the plan. But there's a thing with that, so I'm going with Michael Rectenwald.
Mhm.
Now, do we think Michael Rectenwald is like this amazing, going to come out and smell? But no, but his
Mhm.
message is principled, and yes, he's had some different opinions, and that's fine.
Mhm.
But what I will say is this: I think we, I have really really high standards for what I would consider, you know, is this person going to actually do good for everyone else, or is he going to do good for the LP, or is he just? And to me, a lot of these candidates, they call themselves populists, and I don't disagree. But the problem with populism is you're just doing what's popular. So you just find what's popular, and then you try and make everybody happy. And what happens when you try and make everybody happy in politics? No, nobody's happy, and
Mhm.
not and nothing works. That's why, in my opinion, Trump was so great. It's like, no, I'm against bombing Syria, but I'm going to bomb Syria to make Lindsey Graham happy. But I'm going to do this, but I'm
Yeah.
going to do that, but I'm going to say this. So just the reason that these people have such crazy policies is because they're just like, what will make people like me? Oh, I'm
Totally.
for this, I'm for that, I'm for this, I'm for that, I'm for COVID lockdowns, I'm against COVID lockdowns. My opponent said this,
Mhm.
and then you pull up tweets of them saying the exact opposite. And the reason is because there's no principles. So that's why, in my opinion, you can say I'm wrong for this. Maybe I did have very differing opinions with the caucus on two major issues. One of them is Aaron Bushnell. Uh, Obviously, I see what he did, and I said, well, me being a YouTuber right now, we have
Mhm.
26 people watching. That's not insignificant. I've built a channel with 134 subscribers now. Working on that. I understand that the biggest currency is not dollars. It's not gold. It's not Bitcoin. It's attention. People are like, wait, attention? How do you think? I'm
Mhm.
not a fan of Kim Kardashian, but how do you think these people get so much money? They monopolize attention. Why is that a big deal? Because literally, you can get people, if you can monopolize attention, if you can get people
Mhm.
to talk and look at something, then literally, if you want to sell something, you can. If you want to get a message, you can. If you want a product or service. I always wonder, like, why these politicians want attention? Like, stay away from attention. Like, no, attention's everything. That's why YouTube pays people,
Mhm.
because you get someone's attention and it brings them to their site, and they spend more time, and then potentially they'll buy something from the advertisers. Most
Right.
likely not. Most likely people get sick of ads, but you're spending more time on YouTube. So to me, what he did is not insignificant because it got so many people to talk about it. Whether or not
Mhm.
you agree with it, he even got a street named after him. That's not, to me, bad. And he didn't. And I say, did he hurt anybody else? No, he didn't. Did he have a
Yeah.
message?
To be clear, I don't think he did anything wrong.
No.
Like that's um. I mean, I believe in a right to suicide per se. So
Yes.
yeah, ritual suicide, protest suicide. I don't know if how effective it was in this particular instance. I feel like in general, any pro-Palestine movement at this point is in severe danger of becoming too associated with the cringiest parts of the American left. Um,
I mean, it comes down to the thing. Like, even if I get associated with leftists, or I get associated with this or that or the other, for one, we can see from historical records that monks in Vietnam did do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and the Vietnam War did come to an end, not immediately after they did that, but it made it onto a very, whether you like Rage Against the Machine or not, which I had severe problems with their stance on. It's funny. Everybody who was good on the beer flu thing, in my opinion, is bad on the war thing, and everybody who was, good on the war thing there's a lot of people other than libertarians who are bad on
Mm-hmm.
on this. So that monk who did that got on Rage Against the Machine's album cover. That's not insignificant. Yeah. And that inspired me, along with British punk bands, to really get to be an anarchist and to really take up against the system. So I don't think it's insignificant. I think he had a good message. Was it the best method? We can argue that. But if he had classified intel, which I can't prove he did or didn't, then maybe it wasn't bad. And then another issue I have with the Libertarian Party, which you might disagree. I understand Javier Milei is doing good for Argentina economically, but I'm not what like Keith Preston I've talked to him about. I'm not technically an economic determinist. I think Austrian's the best school. I want to be able to. The reason I didn't stay a punk rocker is because I want to have a decent life, but I actually don't care. I know this will shock me. I actually don't care if a political figure helps with economics. I care if they actively get effective with decentralization. If you're going to call yourself an ANCAP or an ANCOM or an agorist, and I take that up with this too when people go pro-tanky or pro-democrat or pro-whatever, I don't like the fact that now people say if he drops the US dollar, my opinion will change. But here is that he seems to be very cozy with like the Pope, with Ukraine,
with the West,
with the West, and I'm not. And people like Creamy anti-West. No, but I'm anti-NATO. Like I'm anti the sacred leaders of the West, and I'm also anti-BRICS. So I think if you're an ANCAP, you take a radical position and say, hey, I'm going to decentralize everything. There will not be a state. I will not use dollars. And I'm anti-BRICS and NATO. We need to destroy those two.
So here's the issue with that. Have you read any of Murray Rothbard's work from the 90s on NAFTA, right? And how like Rothbard shocked everyone by being anti-NAFTA because he didn't really believe in trade agreements. He felt like free trade was just global trade. Anyone should be able to do any trade. A free trade agreement wouldn't be more than one page, he famously said.
Yes.
But here's the thing, right? Imagine you're in Milei's position and you do say like, well, I'm just not going to be a member of any bloc at all. And then both blocs quit trading with you. Right? It'd be a complete disaster. I think in practice, right? And here's the thing. If Milei cuts off trade with the BRICS bloc, that would be a really bad decision.
I'm not saying he should.
Just to be clear. However,
I'm saying he should be hostile to both NATO and BRICS.
If he's going to exist in one sphere economically, he should choose the West. Because that's absolutely what's better for his country. He is better off being Western aligned than BRICS aligned.
No, he's not.
I don't think he should embrace everything that comes along with that. One thing that I think he justly got criticism for in American libertarian circles was sending some, albeit very minor, military aid to Ukraine. Right? He shouldn't do that. I don't think he should engage in all of the great power politics that come with being aligned with the U.S. That being said, look, if he has to, if he's dropping the peso, which he should, right? The peso is a disaster, and the Central Bank of Argentina is a disaster and should be shut down. That's gonna dollarize his economy, even if they don't embrace the dollar as like the only legal tender. Because I know Milei has said that like he would embrace Bitcoin and hard money as well. But if he abandons the peso, that's going to dollarize his economy, because of the fiat currencies, the dollar is still the strongest, even as it gets ever weaker. So I think there's definitely individual decisions he's made, particularly with regards to foreign policy, that are worthy of a great deal of criticism. That being said, simply choosing that he's going to withdraw from an Eastern focused sphere and align more with America, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think he's actually made the best decision he can in those circumstances.
I
And
disagree.
I know some people I don't particularly like, Daniel McAdams, will say that, well, aligning with the U.S. aids the U.S., right? And in these people's mind, the U.S. is kind of the great Satan, and I don't entirely disagree, right? But I don't think he has any obligation, or any second world leader has any obligation to save the world from the U.S. Right? He's the president of Argentina. He should do what's best for them. He doesn't have any obligation to not play into the globalist schemes. He should simply make the best economic decision for his country at that time. And of course, right? And this is where I would take issue with some things he does, right? He should abide by libertarian principle and by the non-aggression principle. I definitely think there's decisions Milei has made which violate the NAP, and that would be my criticism of him. My criticism would not be that, oh, well, he's aided the globalist agenda. I don't care. He doesn't have any obligation to not, somehow aid the globalist agenda by dollarizing.
Okay. In my opinion, what I would do, this is a radical position, is, and this is if I ever get to any higher office, which I don't know if it's possible or not, but I'm not that old, so I can keep running and running and running, and maybe it's possible. Maybe I inspire enough people to get into a higher office. And the Mises Caucus, and I still have friends who are behind me, and still people watching. So if I do, here's my radical position. You can use dollars, but also have a gold-backed peso, and then also do what Nayib Selke, I think that's how you say his name, of El Salvador is doing, which is, hey, let's buy some things in crypto. So give some competition, and then I take analytics and see what works. Because all money is a signal for the means of exchange. So
Sure.
what we'll do is say, hey, in this area, what's the most valuable resource? Wood. Peg a local currency to wood. In our state, what is the most valuable resource? Coal. Okay, peg a state currency to that. Then back up existing dollars with gold. Then
I don't.
crypto.
I disagree. I think what you're going to end up doing if you do that is you're going to have a government reform that creates a different iteration of a government-controlled central bank. What happens when, Milei and his, liberal faction inevitably lose power? You're just going to have a leftist who inflates the currency again. The key, I think, is to destroy their central bank.
But leftists don't inflate currency.
Okay, I think you're wrong. Okay, well, listen, Peronists, which is the opposing faction, are leftists, and they inflate currency. So he is going to get replaced at some point by an inflationary faction, and that's aside from the point that central banking is simply illegitimate and wrong. So
but I'm not advocate. Okay, so
he should abandon state currency and allow whatever currency arises in its place. That should become the means of exchange in the Argentinian economy. And the fact of the matter is, in South America, if you abandon your state-backed currency, look, there will be crypto. There will be, other competing currencies. There may even be the yuan. But the dominant currency will be the US dollar, and that's fine.
All I'll give you my knowledge. I'm not saying I'm an economist. I don't play one on TV. I don't even really understand most of it. I just listen to Dr. Robert Murphy and Dr. Leeson. Sometimes Tom Woods, if you consider him in that sphere, and some of Jack Lloyd's stuff. Not an economist, not even close to one. Scotland and Switzerland had competing currencies, and it actually helped. I'm not saying have a central bank. I'm saying peg money to something that exists that has either perceived intrinsic value or high subjective value.
Yeah, but that's not something Millet can do, right? He's the president. If he was doing it, that would be central banking. So I think if he abandons the peso, regional banks may very well adopt a local currency that is pegged to local resources, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I think it'll probably get out competed by the dollar because the dollar is a global currency and has value because it's a global currency.
It does. But here's the thing. It's if you look at the charts, it's going up. Like Bitcoin hit $70,000 already, and you have to ask why. Is that just because people just love Bitcoin? Well, or is it because that U.S. debt's going up 100 trillion every so many days? I'm not saying that the dollar's done for necessarily quite soon, but I am saying this: if you want to do the best thing for your country, in my opinion, what I do, if Pennsylvania, if Arizona seceded today, I would say get competing currencies, not a law, just here, like not central planet, get competing currencies, utilize gold, utilize Bitcoin, and we need to actually work with real anarchists. Who are the real anarchists that I've found that exist in the world aside from Malay? There actually are. There is a Swedish party called the Pirate Party. The guy has an eye patch, literally. He's a cool guy. His name Rick Falkvinia in Switzerland. I'd say, look, I want to work with you. I want to work with Nayib Bukele of El Salvador. I want to work with Chet Vidlika of Liberland. If you're familiar with that is, it's in the middle of Serbia and Croatia.
Yeah, no, I know where Liberland is.
And I want to work with the Zapatistas in Mexico. Yes, they're a syndicalist faction, but whatever.
Okay, hold on. I'm getting bad echo. Is that on my end? Can you hear me?
Yeah, no.
Okay,
sorry.
no, that's not so bad. Okay, question, right? So you said Nayib Bukele? I think that's how you say his name in El Salvador?
Yes.
Bukele? Okay. So I like some of what Bukele's done, specifically on monetary policy. I don't have any problem with him being the Bitcoin guy. That being said, how do you, as like a anarcho-coalitionist, with like at least left-wing sympathies, right?
Yes.
How do you prefer him, an explicitly authoritarian right-winger, to Millet, who's just like a liberal?
So what I do is I look at individual things that people do good. Like Saudi Arabia is definitely not libertarian, right? But I'm like, okay, they did good with taxes. Okay, Portugal is not not
libertarian.
Not libertarian. But if you watch Michael Moore, and Michael Moore's not libertarian, he's not even good on the left.
Yeah.
I think he's pro Marx. But I'm like, oh, this worked. So I can find little things that work and be like, okay, that worked.
Sure. I'm just saying, like, when you brought up like people you would work with in your hypothetical international coalition if Pennsylvania seceded from the Union, you brought up Bukele and not Millet. Like, one of them is like objectively more libertarian than the other.
Correct. I said
you see what I'm saying?
Yes. Bukele is
like you brought up Bukele in the same breath as like European anarchist parties. Like, I don't understand how that makes sense as a coalition. Because
they're not using here the European anarchist parties I like because we have shared values.
Right.
I like Bukele because he's not using the U.S. dollar. That's the thing.
Okay.
I think
Yeah, I guess I just like him for the same reason. But like, if like you're granting entrance to the coalition on the basis of shared values, like seems like we share a lot of values with Malay, right?
Hmm.
Like that's kind of where I'm at. Where I'm like, it seems like there's a weird double standard here because of like this aversion some
Yeah,
people in our sphere have to Malay because of like
I don't like him
the
at all.
Daniel McAdams narrative where it's like, well, he's helping the U.S. empire, and
I don't
I don't think that makes any sense at all.
I don't like him because he's not an anarcho-capitalist, and he says
Sure,
he's
I get
one.
that.
And the problem is, if you say that, and people are like, "Are you a purist?" I'm like, "Well, okay. If I say I can bench 300 pounds, and then I bench to
I,
230. That's not so. Here's the thing: I would prefer, fine, forget Bukele. I would work with Chet Vidlika. I would work with Rick Falkvinia of the Swedish Pirate Party, the Zapatistas, Chiron, and maybe like Anarchia in Greece, Rahova, and these left wing anarchist factions, and make some alliance between them that counters BRICS and NATO. We got to get, I don't actually care about improving wealth for the world. I don't care about the economy. We need to we need to balkanize the uh, NATO countries first. Then we need to balkanize the BRICS countries first, if we can. Uh, and that would be
okay, look, I agree with that.
yeah.
I like especially I don't know about like the NATO countries and the BRICS countries, but especially like I think if you're looking at like if you were somehow like a president in this weird hypothetical libertarian alliance, I would say like okay, a good goal might be the balkanization of like in order the US, China, the EU, and Russia,
I
right?
agree.
All of these four like mega empires that are explicitly anti-liberal, right? Like we would want to break them up. I think that's like if you're a libertarian and you disagree with that, like if you're like, oh no, I think it's really important that all those countries or some of those countries stay together. Like I think that would be silly. Um, I don't really see how this is like a relevant strategy discussion though. I
Hmm.
don't see I don't see a strong like alliance of borderline anarchist countries emerging in the near future though, do you? Like
I don't, but I'll tell you this. I do see this potential. Everyone I've talked to, you can the political compass is an imperfect tool because we have imperfect everybody has ideas and you find crazy ideas of all sorts and types. But I've talked to center left people, center right, and I've even seen interesting stuff come from leadership of people I'm diametrically opposed to. John Podesta said in 2019 or 2020, if Trump won, then the Eastern Coast should secede. And I'm like, he wait, I agree with him. And I'm like, I
yeah,
guess I do.
yeah, I
And
agree.
and then Miss QAnon or Marjorie Taylor Greene was posting about secession on Twitter, and I'm like,
Yeah.
wait, I agree. And these are not like insignificant people. These are people like who are heads of,
No, I'm not saying I don't think secession can
and
happen.
I think secession can happen.
I think that is um I think that's a reasonable expectation in the fairly near term, actually. I just don't see how I don't really see how like the hypothetical like global anarchist alliance makes that more likely. Cause I don't even see like what exactly are we advocating for?
So
What are you supposed to do?
what are you supposed? Here's what I think you're supposed to do. Keith Preston is kind of the mastermind on this. I'm executing it in real time. If you get the book Failures of Anarchism, he does say the idea is this: first balkanization, then you pull out the Murray Rothbard and Kropotkin and Konkin books and be like, look, okay, what do we do? Help, we're split up, we don't have Uncle Sam, I'm big sad. Ooh, whose flag do I? I'm like, forget that shit. Here we have Rothbard, we have this, this town wants to centralize here. Okay, we have a Rothbardian town that has, common law, which is actually probably what I'd want to live in. Okay, next to us we have an agorist thing that doesn't has this, you know, form of law, whatever. Next to us we have a Sharia law town. Next to us we have this. Essentially making, I know Rothbard says get down to the individual. I would say I agree if you're like a Sterner Tucker type dude. If you're not, most people are probably going to want a city or a town. I think that's the logical step is you break states off from nations. Those state governments fail from lack of federal funding, which is good. That's what I want. And then you have small individual towns. Then you introduce to those individual towns, since it is smaller, you're not violating the Dunbar number, different forms of anarchism, and you see which one works. And then you have competing ones. As
Okay,
Anapom,
I see where you're going with that. I just I think this is all sort of you've gone into a lot of detail about this, but it's all that all takes place after the first step, which we don't necessarily have a great way to get to. Does that make sense? Like what you're describing is very similar, although not exactly the same. Have you ever read or listened to Hans Hermann Hoppe's What Must Be Done? Because what you're describing is something very similar.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
But I don't see exactly how we get there, right? I think secession's coming, but I'm not sure what the plan is to take advantage of that in a libertarian way. Like, are we doing this through party politics? Are we just running for school board? Are we revolutionaries now? Like, I still don't see the actual plan.
I guess the actual plan is this. The federal government's failing, so we take advantage of that through secession movements. That's the first plan, I think. I can get Keith Preston's book. Keith Preston actually lays out the plan. If Keith is watching or if he's on, Keith is actually effectively, I'm not that smart. I'm actually going off of someone else's plan. Well, I'll say this. A lot of world leaders that you see are running off of somebody else's program, even the ones who think. Like Ron Paul was going off Rothbard, right?
Yeah.
Vladimir Putin is going off, like you said, Russia is going off Alexander Dugin's plan. Neoliberals are going off, whatever their donors and they're the people who are telling them, to do a lot of our government is. So people are executing off someone else's plan. I guess his plan is that I could probably just get the book, but
yeah. Okay.
Because he's obviously I'm coming on 30.
I've never read any Preston, but I would be down for sure.
Yeah, I need to get Keith in here because, like, I asked Keith about something. It's generally like.
Okay, look, I will be fair. I'm asking hyper specific questions about praxis. I have zero theory about praxis.
Okay, fair enough.
All the questions I'm asking you, I don't have any answer to. Right? I'm an LP guy, and I don't even really think the LP works. So,
all right. So, I will give you the answer by getting the book because I think everybody needs to read Failures of Anarchism and see the best way to move forward because we don't have a good solid political philosophy, but he does. That's why I'm still part of the LP. That's why I'm still part of C4SS. That's why I'm still doing this thing because I honestly believe I've looked at, trust me, I've looked at Dugin, I've looked at Marx, I've looked at Kropotkin, I've looked at Rothbard, I've looked at even Triple H, I've looked at Maltesta, I've looked at all of these people. I've listened to Jordan Peterson, I've listened to some of the Marxist professor people. I can't remember their names. Listen to Norman Finkelstein. I've listened to Jackson Hinkle. I've listened to, Destiny. I've listened to all these guys, listened to a lot of political content. I've read a lot of stuff. He has the best ideas. And since there's 34 people watching, I'm going to do a magic trick and run and grab the book. And I do have the thing highlighted because this is the best strategy. I know, it's the hardest strategy. It's extremely hard. It's not hard for the reason you think it is. It's not actually hard because of Klaus Schwab of the federal government. It's hard because in practice, this is the most impossible thing to do, is get these people to work. But I'm going to grab the book. I'm going to quote what my friend Anna Pacentia said. Then we'll talk about the list that we're on, because hey, we made it, cool. And then we'll wrap it up. I appreciate you inviting people. 34 listeners is good. I'm
Nice.
gonna
That's sick.
All right, got it. Two books I think every anarchist who's hardcore should read is A. Keith recommended this to me. This is an 800-page book called Demanding the Impossible. And this goes over the history of anarchism. 800 pages. This is his book, specifically Failures of Anarchism. If we go to why I am a pan-anarchist, everybody, I guess, expected when I said I was not an anarcho-capitalist anymore, said, well, does that mean you're a statist? And I'm like, no, I don't want to, I'm not going to, do anything. No. But he has two things in why he is an anarcho-pluralist. Now, to give some context, I have that right in my bio. What does that mean? I'm going to preface it with this. If we got perfect anarchy today, if Josh Smith is watching, he said he doesn't like Kropotkin, or someone will say they don't like Rothbard. There's 8 billion people in the world. Even with war and everything, say there's 7 billion or 6 billion. I am 100% sure, because of the negative connotation that capitalism has got, you will not get everybody, even if you got all the world's anarchists, you will not get everybody to agree. This idea, there's people who like Stirner, there's people who are anti-capitalist, there's people who are pro-collectivist, there are people who are pro this or that. So I don't think, you can, just like the neocons say everybody should have American elections, that'll never happen. And I don't really care. I don't care if Afghanistan has elections. We can't even get our elections right. So I'll say this to kind of back up what Keith is talking about here, that we're not all going to agree on what anarchism is, what it looks like, how it works. The only thing we can agree is that, we'll have competing ideas. I was talking to Anna Pacentia about this, and he said there's no bad ideas. I know people say communism's a bad idea, but I think you should be allowed to try communism next to capitalism, next to this, or next to free markets.
Sure, I think you should be allowed to try it. I would say that it can still be a bad idea.
Yeah. Now, you said, and I'll comment one thing. You said leftists inflate currency. Peronists, to me, are kind of like, I put in the upper right corner of tankies or Marxist communists. They call themselves leftists. What they really are authoritarian collectivists. And what the difference between economic factions are in authoritarian right is they inflate currencies, they distribute properly, and they cause shortages.
Sure, but aren't like ANCOM's anti-currency? That's equally bad.
Okay, so ANCOMs, yes, ANCOMs believe in abolishing money, like Peter Kropotkin, my friend, re-education, stuff like that. So I said, guys, how will you do this? Now, if you know what your bank account is, it's a text file. So essentially you have a barrier, which is a text file, which is being overinflated, and that means you can't access goods or do certain things. I would prefer to use this combination. Like people said, like, what are you economically? I agree with all three of them. I agree with all these mechanisms. Sound money, skill share economies is what ANCOMs believe in. So you say, Harry's very good at cybersecurity. So Harry, what you're going to do is you're going to help me, protect, set up a firewall, and then you can go to the grocery store and take anything you want, anything you need. I know that people are going to cringe over this, but if you have a Dunbar number of 150 to 200 people, then the quote from Karl Marx, not an advocate of Karl Marx, but each according to his ability, according to his need. Meaning, I provide the skills I have that you need, and then, like my friend re-education would say, go fix someone's toilet, they should cook you a pot roast. And that's how we do the economy. You could do barter trade, like agorism, I just barter, and then you could have mutual aid, which just means I need help, send me money. I believe in some combination of all four of those.
Okay. Okay, I guess here's my question. On your Skillshare example, why
Correct.
is that better than just paying someone money as a
Why is that?
representation of the value, and then they can go buy whatever they want?
Because if you have a small community, which America, if you drive through, or most countries, if you look through them, they're small towns, favelas, whatever you call them. The good thing about that is you don't actually need to use a representational signal for everything. You can just trade skills for skills, and that takes a barrier out of the way. Now the problem is, yes, you can have economic
Sure,
problems with
but it's not
lack
like
of
it's not
solutions.
like that's illegal.
It's not.
I
It's
mean,
not
I
even a
mean,
bad idea.
even
It
if
just
it is,
doesn't
even
work
if it is, I mean,
all the time.
to the extent that it is illegal, right? Because there's certain things you can't trade in, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, it should be legalized. I'm not like anti-barter, but what if what if I'm the cybersecurity guy in my town of 500,
Correct.
and I'm trying to Skillshare, and I'm like, well, nothing gets produced in this town, right? This is very it's this small agrarian community. There's very little valuable economizing going on here. I need certain goods that aren't from here. Do you not see how it like
Yeah. Okay. So here,
do you not see how money is like a globalizing force and how that would be useful to me?
well, I said I agree with all. I said I agree with sound money, but also what I agree with is you should complete your physical supply chain local, like Conkin would say. So my answer is if the agrarian community, whether it's ANCAP, ANCOM, Agorist, even primitivist, even if the resources don't exist, they don't exist. Now, if they do exist and you want to trade your skills, like, hey, I'll set up a firewall if you give me if you cook me a chicken, that I'm fine. I'm fine with that. I know people are going to say go get an economic education. I'm not an economist. I'm not even an economic determinist. I don't care what happens. Like I just like seeing central banks fail. It's kind of funny. In Keith's chapter, "Why I'm an Anarcho Pluralist," Part 2, he says, "Imagine for one horribly unpleasant moment that anarchist movements in North America in their present form were to carry out an actual revolution. What kind of social or political system would be the result?" The Wikipedia entry on anarchism in the United States lists a number of individuals who represent North American anarchism in different ways. These include Michael Albert, a Chomskyite, Ashanti Auslin, David Graeber, Howard Elric, a social anarchist, Cindy Milstein, a Bookchinite. He does mention Lou Rockwell, Rothbardian. I'm not going to name all of them, but
Mm-hmm.
the list doesn't even begin to mention all the ideologies and tendencies to be found among anarchists, anarchism, anarcho-communism, national anarchism, insurrectionary anarchism,
Right.
Christian. So I'm going to skip this. Most of these tendencies would grow exponentially. How would anarchists go about organizing society? So here's what he suggests. There's really only three ways. One would be anarcho-totalitarianism, wherever whatever anarchist faction or group of factions happens to have most power simply represses their rivals and anarchists alike. But I wouldn't agree with that. Another would be anarcho mass democracy, which has an anarchist parliament of syndicalists, primitivists, libertarian ecology, perhaps presided over by, say, the Prime Minister, Chuck Munson. Well, it might be an interesting situation. Wouldn't be much different than the states we have today. So here's his actual solution. The only alternative is the dispersion of power to local units. This could be localities where everything is completely privatized, HAPA, or everything is completely collectivized, anarcho-communism, or some point in between. And the specific anarchist tendencies these communities represented would be determined according to prevailing ideological currents at the local level. One contemporary anarchist observes, so after the revolution, the primies, primitivists, would be the dominant in the region, the Reds in theirs, presumably the Free Staters, the queer anarchists in theirs, and so forth. It's interesting to observe how radically different value systems of freedom employed by different kinds of anarchists there are. One anarchist has noted that some anarchists wish to bar alcohol, drug, tobacco, meat, porn,
Okay.
stuff.
All right.
So,
I guess I have something to say on that since we're doing this right now.
okay.
Okay, so to be clear, I'm not an anarcho-totalitarian.
No, no,
I do not
it's a
believe that
joke.
well, no, I get what he's saying though. I don't think anarcho-capitalists should somehow come to dominate other anarchist communities and force them to be ANCAPs to the extent that that even makes sense. Like, that's not necessarily what I'm calling for. And I understand that there's all these different flavors of anarchism. All I'm saying is that one of them is correct, and one of them, the rest of them, are not.
Okay, here's the problem with that. Let's say you were 100% convinced that was true. I don't think you can convince people in every part of the world everything, because what he says
Sure.
what he says is this, like, the good thing he's saying is, what I'm saying and he's saying is, and why I'm a pan anarchist is, he says, like, you can do all different types of things. So he says, like, meanwhile, outside the context of single issue movements for radical decentralization, different anarchist factions could continue their interests in different contexts. Libertarians could continue to push for private money or competing currencies. That's us. Syndicalists could continue to push for anarcho syndicalist unions. Primitivists could set up tech free communes or village. Anti racists could protest clan marches. And national anarchists could set up ethnic separatist intentional communities. Pro lifers could agitate against abortion. Feminists could against, pro-lifers. Gun nuts could do their own thing, and anarcho-communists could organize Israeli-style kibbutzism, and anarcho-capitalists could set up their preferred private defense agencies. Additionally, he says different factions, as the Free Staters are doing in New Hampshire, the Christian Exodus is doing in South Carolina, and Native Americans are doing in the Lakota Republic, or Ron Paulus does, are doing in Liberty districts. Indeed, Bill Bishop's interesting book, The Big Sort, describes how Americans are in the process of self-separation. And he also says this does not mean that sovereign communities cannot have institutionalized projects for individual liberties, minority rights, or popular rule.
Okay. So I totally acknowledge that, like, self-separation will happen.
Correct.
Right? It happens with the state.
It's
it's I think it will accelerate even more without the state.
Correct.
My only contention is that there is a theory of justice which is correct, and other theories of justice are wrong. So let me just ask: do you have any single theory of human rights? Do you believe in any natural law, or do you think there is something inherently? Do you think there's an ethical system that's inherently true?
I think I do. But
Okay.
here's the problem. I do and I don't. I'll give you this. I believe the natural law presented by St. Thomas Aquinas is correct. I believe, however, you actualize that in the world can be radically different. Whether you do that through common law, whether you do that through constitutional, districts, whether you do that through Sharia law, that can, fundamentally be different. Also, people will probably disagree about, well, how are you going to enforce that? Like, there are people who say, and I've heard them in the US, oh, if you steal, yeah, you should be, do we want to say, okay, he stole, he violated natural law? Do you hit them with a fine? Do you cause bodily issue? What do you do? So I know I sound weird here. I would like to see, like, a Hans Hermer town with common law, a Hans Hermann Hoppe town with constitutional law, a Hans Hermann Hoppe town with Sharia law, and then next to it, anarcho-communist town with this or this type of law, and then see how they fare out. I'm not saying I'm a moral relativist. I am saying I believe in natural law as a self-enacting thing. That, hey, if I go, like you said, you had regret from your previous occupation, and to me, I believe there's a metaphysical aspect to that, of some intelligent force saying, hey, serving the state's wrong, so I'm going to give you some kind of feeling of guilt for doing that. That makes sense.
Okay. So you believe in, and correct me if this is an unfair mischaracterization, but I would say that like what you're saying is that you believe there is an objective truth, but you just don't know what it is,
I believe
and you would have to like that would have to be revealed to you by the consequences of the policy.
I believe there's an objective truth when you okay. I believe the NAP is actually the objective, secularized objective truth of the
Okay.
golden rule. I do believe, however, certain communities have the right, especially if you're breaking stuff up, to go ahead and actualize that in different ways. So I do know what that is from Mark Passio, but I am saying, look, if you want to set up a constitutional town that says, okay, if you steal, I'll put you in jail. If you want to set up a commonwealth
Okay,
town,
that's I'm gonna have to stop you there because like that's what I was driving at was
okay.
the NAP, and I think if you give me the NAP, I can get everything else from that, and everything else is anarcho-capitalism. I think if the societies you are talking about conform to the NAP and the theory that it gives birth to, those are ANCAP societies. And if they don't conform to the NAP,
No, they aren't.
those are wrong societies.
Okay. I agree with 50%. You're violating people's rights. If it's involuntary, that's wrong. ANCAP is a very, very specific thing. That's why I got on the line. ANCAP means complete privatization of just about everything. It also means you're going to use a system of money. Now, there's nothing in the NAP that says I have to use money. Quite the contrary. No. There's people who believe in the NAP. I think agorist societies would say barter. I actually haven't looked at what Caucus says. What does Caucus say about money? I'm not actually sure. Does he use money?
Yeah, Konkin is pro money. Konkin is like a hard money Austrian. He just doesn't like wage labor or certain modern corporate structures.
Okay. And I agree with that. More the Konkin.
Okay.
So
I you say that like an anarcho-capitalist society has to use money. I think you're thinking about it wrong. An anarcho-capitalist society has to allow the use of money. But I think we're adopting like sort of a leftist definition of capitalism as like rule by capital. And if you want to use that definition of capitalism, that's fine, but that's not what I'm talking about. Okay. To like anarcho-capitalism is adherence to the NAP. If you want to say that that's all anarchism, that's fine too, I guess. If you like voluntarism better, that's fine. I don't particularly care about the term. But there's only two societies. There's societies that follow the NAP, right?
Correct.
And societies that are incorrect. And so if you are arguing an extra NAP anarchism that does not acknowledge that aggression is wrong, then you are arguing for an incorrect and bad society. Here's a question.
Yes.
We both agree that the state is bad, right?
Correct.
Is the state the only entity in a society which commits aggression?
No.
Okay.
And I'm not. That's what I'm saying is this.
Let's take like the example of a criminal gang, right? That's going around stealing and committing aggression. Does libertarian theory have anything to say about that? Do you get where I'm driving at?
Yes.
Yeah, like the answer is yes. Libertarian theory says, well, that's wrong because it's aggression. So like if you have anarcho-criminal gangism, that is wrong. Makes sense? Like just as an example.
Yeah.
If you created like a lot of egoists are basically this exactly. They're anarcho-murder hoboists. That's wrong because it violates the NAP.
Whoa. Okay. There's a lot of things. Konkin called red markets um, organized crime. I,
Right.
funny enough, you want to talk about relevant institutional alternatives. I'll take Chicago as an example. No one thinks Capone is a saint that I know of. Maybe some people do who got fed by in the soup kitchens. But
Okay.
him having competing, if you want to call them criminal gangs, warlords, whatever,
Sure.
with Chicago, created a power equilibrium. And it's kind of funny. People like anarchism in the US. I'm like, well, Chicago was safer under Capone and these people fighting rather than one central authority under Lori Lightfoot. That's a distinction that I think that is worth making, is that you can have, in fact, violent actors who have power equilibriums who will stop, and then they won't conform to the NAP, but it'll be better. It'll be better. I'm a natural law advocate
Sure.
as an individual, but I'm a consequentialist when it comes to political systems because I know people are going to do dumb things. So I can say one
Okay,
thing is
but you
better
not
than
like that
another.
is an actual contradiction.
No, it's not.
Okay, listen.
I know that
Um,
violence is going to exist in any particular system.
sure, I
I
agree.
just say, look, my thing is this. I myself as an individual say I'm going to follow the NAP as best to my ability. I'm not going to hurt anybody else. I'm going to do that, but I acknowledge the people who will. So how can I mitigate that? Well, there's different systems of anarchism, and I'm not going to say one is perfect, but I'm going to say certain circumstances are better than others. I will say minarchy. I don't agree with minarchy is better than a full blown corporatist society which we have now.
Of
There'll
course.
still be violence in minarchy. So that's where I come to be a consequentialist in that perspective. Also,
Okay, I
for
I have a question.
go ahead.
Imagine, um, let's use like a really gross, terrible example. Imagine the state was going to, let's say the state was going to have some sort of gulag system. I don't know. Let's say we are living in a hypothetical future Nazi America, and they are going to gas all the Jews. But you personally have the power to stop it by gassing one Jew. Should you do that? Should you do it?
No,
Of course not. Okay.
but
So,
that's an extreme example. Look, here's the
well,
thing.
that's the point. Extreme examples are how you discover the limits of your ethical system.
Okay. Let me break it down to you that all systems are going to have problems. I want the ones with least problems. That seems to be anarchist things.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'll agree with this. Anarchists it has to be voluntary. You have to follow the NAP, and it should be preferably decentralized. You don't want large things. So we agree there. Now, me and John Zerzan are going to have that being said, me and John Zerzan both believe we shouldn't aggress on people. I had him on. Our
Mhm.
existence is going to be hugely different. For one, I'm going to be on a computer all day, and he's going to not be. Yeah,
Okay.
and that's a huge distinction. Um, and I like John Zerzan, or like mutualists or ANCOMs do things.
Okay. Here's the limit for me. Here's the limit for me with panarchy.
Okay,
Zerzan's a primitivist, right?
correct.
Okay.
I
So
don't like them, but
yeah, I hate primitivists, but that's beside the point. Imagine, right? I'm living in my transhumanist ANCAP society, right? And Zerzan's out there acting like Tarzan in his anarcho primitivist society. He has returned to monkey, right?
woo-hoo.
What is the limit at which he can say, no, we're a primitivist society, you can't bring your technology here? How do you define where that's acceptable?
How do I define where it's acceptable? I look at the
Yeah,
individual.
at what point does Zerzan get to say, I can't have my computer and do what I'm doing with it?
If primitivists, here's a funny thing. Uh, People say, Kareem, are you Second Amendment absolutist or a gun absolute? Yeah, except if a primitivist society says, do not bring them here, don't bring technology here, don't do this, don't do this. I would agree with him and say, yeah, don't bring your tech there. Don't bring. Now I don't know how far he goes because he went on a computer with me.
Okay, hold on.
He has the right to tell you. Someone has the right to set up a village a thing and say, hey, we don't want the use of technology here. How do I know that? The Amish do it right now.
Okay, imagine someone in his community
Yes.
has created a little primitivist homestead for themselves. How primitive are these primitivists? Do they allow you to have a house?
So okay, you can. It depends. There, just like the ANCAP scale, there's ANCAPs like, yeah, a little sales tax. Okay, fine, we'll do incrementalism. It depends how extreme you are. They're
Okay,
primitive. You would say
it
don't use
doesn't matter.
language.
Let's imagine the Anprim makes a hut, right?
Yes.
Okay. Would we say that anarcho-primitivist owns that hut?
Yes.
Okay, now imagine they sell me that hut in the middle of their Anprim community, and I bring my computer there. Can I bring my computer there?
Do they allow you
To the hut? To
I,
the hut I bought. It's my property. I own the hut. Can I bring my computer to the hut?
Probably, yeah. I think it'd be frowned upon, but yes.
Well, then I'm fine. That's not a problem.
Yeah, I think they'd be like, why do you? I think what would happen is you could, but then like, here's the thing. I've been in anarcho. People like, why do you coalition with syndicalists over conservatives? Because conservatives got very, very annoyed when I said, oh, end the drug war. I bring, okay, let's legalize sex work or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Or even sometimes let's defund the DMV. They get, oh my God. But and I'll go into syndicalist things and I'll say I like Rothbard and anarcho-capitalism. They'll say, haha, you're a neo-feudalist. But no one kicked me out. No one's ever been mean. But yeah, I got ridiculed. But if the most thing is I get called a neo-feudalist or I get called like, oh, you're a weird, you're a techie geek, dude. That's probably what they do. They like, look at Harry over there with his laptop. Like, doesn't he know that like EMF is bad, for this or whatever? I don't know.
Sure, that's fine.
I don't hang out.
I don't care if they shun me. That's okay.
Yeah, I don't hang out with tons of primitivists, but
okay, but just to be clear, if there's no limit to my use of my scarce means of my private property, if we are operating fully within the NAP, then it doesn't matter what different flavor the community has. It's ANCAP.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So like even if you don't want to call it ANCAP, that's fine.
Okay, fine. This is a semantic thing.
No ANCAP would say no. You have to have computers on your property too.
Yeah. I agree.
Okay.
Capitalism is the natural basis of what would happen if you leave things alone. That being said, I wouldn't call everything ANCAP because some people don't necessarily believe in using free markets. I think Rothbard should have called it, free market anarchism.
Sure, whatever. I don't really care. I call myself an ANCAP. I kind of like the term, actually.
But, I like anarcho-pluralist or pan.
I'm not aggressively attached to the term.
Hey, you guys want to end the Fed? What's funny is, I guarantee you this. Everybody, what do they always say? End the Fed, end the Fed.
Yeah.
Well, end the Fed. Jack Lloyd has a song, I want you to end the Fed. And then like Natalie will always post end the Fed. I'm like, okay, fine. Let's go to a Skillshare economy.
Wait, who's Jacqueline?
Who's Jacqueline? Or Jack Lloyd. Jack Lloyd has
Jack Lloyd. I was like,
I like Jack. He's cool. Here's the thing.
No, I like Jack.
Here's how if you really want to end the Fed, if I drive through Arizona, I would see towns that are 150, 200 people, even smaller.
Yeah.
I would be like, look, if the dollar's not working, you all know each other, right? Yes. You all potentially somewhat like each other, right? Yeah, my neighbor's fine. But does he have skills you can trade? Yeah, okay. Trade skills. Use the dollar.
Yeah, you could
have wrong. I know you and Josh did not like me defending Kropotkin on Twitter, but like PD got some stuff going on for the homeboys.
I don't disagree with everything the left anarchists ever wrote. I think I think sometimes in their zeal against markets, they advocate for breaking the NAP. I would also say that look, fundamentally, the NAP, as far as I conceive of it, is a
Yes.
property theory,
Yes.
and contract theory must be downstream of your property theory. So any contracts that you make on the basis of a nonsensical property theory are not valid. So the validity of your property theory is actually important to the just structure of a society. Does that make sense?
It does. But I'm an advocate of, if you
No.
want, if I have, let's say I have 5 laptops, and I say, fine, I'm gonna retain one laptop for personal property, or like my food is my personal property. This is technically what ANCAPs would call their private property. ANCOMs call their personal property, and then you give some of the surplus of your property so the collective can function better. I know that's, and then in some cases you do that, and then you also abolish money in addition to that, and just um, trade skills for skills. I'm not saying I necessarily agree with that. I am saying it is a potential possibility in the realms of decentralized economics that we can look at.
Sure.
That's kind of my thing. That's why maybe I agree. Maltesta is my go-to, but I guess that's why I looked into some of these systems. Funny enough, it came from the Mises Caucus, because I was at the takeover.
Right.
I was in a room with people. Everybody's like, "Don't you know Michael Malice did this? Don't you know Michael Malice interviewed Glenn Beck? Don't you know
Yeah.
Michael Malice said this, this, that, and the other? Michael Malice, we should give him the keys to Twitter." I'm like, "Oh, this guy must be good," and I did listen to him, and he was good. And I said, "Oh, he has a book coming out," and I bought the
The
book.
Anarchist Handbook. Yeah,
Yeah,
that was my first that was my first introduction to left anarchists.
yes, that was my first introduction. But then I got annoyed. What did he do? He took paragraphs of these people and just put it in. He didn't actually like do anything. It just, so I'm like, okay, well, why did Emma Goldman say there was no communism in Russia? That doesn't make any sense. Like, I don't think she's just saying that to say that. I'm like, oh wait, do I have the wrong idea about this? Then I met Jeremy. Then I met people. I'm like, oh wait, this isn't what I thought they believed. I thought, everybody was, Karl Marx and have the state run everything. I was wrong. There was actually, and then I watched a video by, this is my Ezekiel, and I said, well, I think I had this wrong. I think I misunderstood this. And yeah,
Okay.
I'm looking, and then I changed my opinion. I said, like, look, I don't think I agree with anarcho-capitalism, and I agree with Austrian economics. I don't think it's the only way to do things. Whatever you call it, I'm fine with. But yeah,
Yeah,
uh,
I don't really care what it's called either. All I would say is that like whatever alternative anarchist communities you have are still
yeah,
just as restrained. They're only valid to the point that they're restrained by the non-aggression principle.
NIP. Correct. Correct. And guess what? They all get on that list. So I saw, guess what? They put all libertarians and all anarchists on the list. So, hey, my hard work finally
Facts.
paid off. You know what? The NSA and the FBI never like any of my memes, though. I don't know why. I'm just saying they could drop a
You're out here getting downranked.
yeah, yeah. They're like, well, sir, I don't think this guy's funny. Here's the thing. Um, I personally think that they don't, like, it's like Dave Smith said, they don't actually think you're all these things that they're saying. They don't actually um, believe all this. They don't. They don't. They don't really believe this stuff. What they do believe is that we're a threat, so they got to call us all these names.
Mm-hmm.
They got to put us on lists. And they got to do everything to make society think, man, these people are dangerous and they're scary, but it's not working anymore. So to me, this is the last kind of refuge of, these these psychopaths to try and hold things down. I don't think it's going to work. They can put me on as many lists and you and all of us on many lists as they want. At the end of the day, what they're going to find is it was actually ineffective, and that we're still winning a lot of people.
So
And I'm even say they want to ban TikTok. I think partially because yes, maybe it gave some people pro Gaza notions, but also because you can get ideas out there very, very quickly. So if I
sure, no,
post a video,
they've always wanted to control social media. I think some of the TikTok thing is actually a big data thing. I think a lot of this is like American tech companies being like, hey, China can't steal everyone's personal information. That's our job. They're cutting into our market share. Shut it down.
yeah,
Look, I don't think that I think part of the reason that any movement we do in the right direction is going to need to be decentralized. And part of the reason I believe that is because I don't really think that we are getting anywhere in a way. Like I think that as a general rule, normal people hate anarchists a lot more than they hate the state. And I think that will probably always be the case. And
do they?
I think, yeah, I think they do. I think normal people really love the government. I think it is actually typical and very well adjusted to want to take other people's stuff.
Mm, okay, I'll tell you this. Like, obviously you're younger than me growing up in the 90s when I was born. And then growing up in the 90s, if you said, yeah, I'm an anarchist, it was like, ooh, I bet, he did sets buildings on fire, he punches, whatever.
Yeah.
Just, you're just some crazy weird.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, okay, Malcolm Malice says he's an anarchist, no issue, no issue. Other people say they're anarchists, no issue.
Sure. I think that's.
I think being more
I think your I don't think it's reality that changed. I think it's your perception that changed, and I think what did that is the internet. So I think now that we have this tool, if we have a properly decentralized movement, right, then we can start to get somewhere in like very limited ways. Right? We're just fighting for the smallest possible gains on the absolute margins. And the key to this is actually those lists. And I'll tell you why. The federal government's strategy for working against political extremists, and this isn't just, like right anarchists. This is basically any leftist, and even like conservatives who are like even mildly upsetting to the average beltway goer, right? This is even like MAGA people.
I would say anyone who's not a neoliberal. I'll even go that
effectively, yeah, basically. If you're not totally bought into the liberal world order, right? You're on the list.
Yes.
Okay.
That's
The strategy for working against these people is explicitly based on coin. This is a counterinsurgency strategy that they ripped straight from the war on terrorism. And the great thing to know about that strategy is that it totally failed. So if we have a properly decentralized revolution, right? And we start just chipping away at these little gains. That is how we reach the 0.5 percentage point of the population that are capable of being vaguely Rothbardian. And once we do that, like that's it. That's the victory, right? We just need them to crack down on us so that we can have our blowback, essentially. And that is, we will reach those people. And that's all there is to it. After that, we just have to start, sort of fighting to free ourselves. That's it. Like that's the revolution. That's all we're going to get.
I mean, I'll take that. Look, you fight. What did I say? What was the general said? You fight with the army you have, not the one you want. Yeah, I think this strategy is definitely going to fail. I think we can beat them, and I think being an anarchist is more normalized than it has been before. If we can ride this wave, I think we can. I think we can. We can win. The problem is we have to make sure that once we win, once the federal government's gone, that we create a system that creates the same level of wealth, in my opinion, but a better level of social cohesion. That is a challenge. I think it's tough, but I think we have some of the best thinkers, really, some of the best ideas, so we can make it happen. With that being said, that's all I got, Harry. It was good to see you
Seems
again.
like a good point to leave off. Hey, thanks, Trey. Appreciate it.
Thank you. This is my favorite ANCAP man and ANCAP stand. Go check him out at the Arizona AZ. It is Harry Wells. He's still fighting for freedom, and he got spicy content. Check him out on Twitter. He's a cool dude. He believes in anarchy. Rothbard flavor.
All right. See you, man.